Georgia's a place that is going to take a lot of work. The one thing I will tell you is the Democrats have built quite a machine in the past few years. I remember when they put 1,000 operatives on the ground for those Senate runoffs. You know, this infrastructure they built, they've used again. I think Georgia, the Republicans really need to be focused on it. But what people don't understand about Georgia, how you could see what you saw in some of those movies and videos, is that if you cast an illegal ballot, let's say you go to Dropbox and you cast 50, and yours, you know, you're only legally allowed to cast yours. Well, you've committed 49 cases of voter fraud. However, the law is flawed. It says those ballots must still be counted. And that's what people never understood. That's how you could see all those boxes being jammed. But when they said that the ballots were legal, they were telling the truth. Both things were true.
All right, guys, welcome to the show. A lot here to get to. Brand new polling from the Trafalgar Group. That's coming up in just a minute. Now, remember, these guys are the most accurate in the business. They have been spot on over and over again. So this is why you want to hear them. What's moving, what's not, where are the opportunities. I'm going to break it all down with Robert Cahaly in the key states that we need to win. Just that's coming up. Last night, major event with Donald Trump and Elon Musk. He's back on Twitter for the first time in 3 years. Some technical glitches at the front end, but then the guy goes for almost 2.5 hours till about 11 o'clock. Think about this. He goes in a conversation with Elon for 2.5 hours about anything and everything they talked about with no script. And we've got the presidential nominee on the other side who won't sit for an interview or talk to reporters. I mean, there is a contrast going on here. Plus, I enjoyed, it was a conversation last night, not an interview, is how Elon framed it. And I think he was right. When you're not being attacked, when someone is not adversarial, you can have a much better conversation, can't you? And I think it showed last night. I want to tell you a little bit about crowd sizes and why the issue matters, if you will, in just a minute. There's a lot to go for on this. And then Kamala Harris, who was a month ago the most disliked vice president in U.S. history, is now gracing the cover of Time magazine and being fawned over. I mean, check this out. It's amazing. Her moment. Oh, Kamala. But it's really about her? Or is it just that she's not Joe Biden? I think that's what that is. It's anybody. You know, we're just going to replace Joe Biden. We'll put anyone there and then they'll be happy. And the media is like, okay, we got the memo. Expect more of this. And remember, most people have never heard of her before in any substantive way. And so now they're thinking, wow, she's a great person. This is what we're up against. Caitlin Collins from CNN, by the way, before I go on, was on Colbert last night, the CBS late night show that has become a political talk show. And he asked her an interesting question. And this is how the audience reacted. I want to show you this.
Trump has kind of been thrown on his heels by this, and he's not really sure how to go after Vice President Harris. He knew his attack lines on President Biden. He really has struggled with how to go after someone who's 20 years younger than him, who is a different gender, a different race. It's kind of been this moment where he has not been able to coalesce around a single attack line.
I know you guys are objective over there, that you just report the news as it is. Oh, I know. CNN makes a... I know.
Was that supposed to be a laugh line?
It wasn't supposed to be, but I guess it is.
I mean, I know it's supposed to be funny, but the talk show, that wasn't supposed to be a laugh line. And the audience laughed because they thought it was funny. They were like, you're not objective. We all know who you're in the tank for. I mean, I know Colbert tries to tell jokes. That wasn't supposed to be one, but the audience thought it was. That tells you a lot about everything. All right, I want to get into something about crowd size and show you. She was saying he doesn't know his audience. He doesn't know his attack line. I think that's not true. Before I do that, I want to tell you about your retirement, because I think a lot of people focus on a 401k or an IRA, and rightly so. But think about it. The government controls every aspect of it, doesn't it? Right? How much you can put in, when you can put it in, when you can take it out, how much you can take it out, what you can borrow against, how you have to repay it, everything. And by the way, it's funny because it's your money, isn't it? And yet, if you want to play the game, It's all controlled by the government. But bank on yourself is the proven retirement alternative. It's the proven alternative to this. You don't have to play by their rules. You can bypass Wall Street and beat the banks at their own game. You get guaranteed predictable growth in retirement. I mean, you don't get that with an IRA. You get tax-free retirement income, and you're in control. You get access to your money, no questions asked. Plus, you get a guaranteed rate of return. You don't get that with the other stuff. And perhaps the best of all, you get peace of mind. You know the minimum guaranteed value of retirement savings on the day you plan to tap into them. I mean, this is unbelievable. There is an alternative to the government-run retirement system. So you can get a free report with all the details that I'm telling you about for the bank on yourself strategy and all of the guarantees that come with it, predictability, the ability to control it, everything that I've said. So to go to bankonyourself.com/Spicer, bankonyourself.com/Spicer, and hear about the alternatives to the government-run retirement system that exists right now. All right. Kaitlan Collins in that last segment said that Trump didn't have a defined attack. Well, here's the ad that they just put out. I think this is pretty compelling. Take a look.
I am Kamala Harris. My pronouns are she and her.
You're considered the most liberal United States senator. Well, actually, the nonpartisan GovTrack has rated you as the most liberal senator.
Do you have any plans to visit the border?
We are going to the border. We've been to the border.
You haven't been to the border.
And I haven't been to Europe. I am in favor of saying that we're not going to treat people who are undocumented and cross borders criminals. That's correct. That is correct.
A lot of the signs at the rally you just held were people standing there saying, abolish ICE.
Yeah.
Is that a position that you agree with?
We need to probably think about starting from scratch.
So you support giving universal health care, Medicare for all to people who are in this country illegally?
I am opposed to any policy that would deny in our country any human being public health, period.
Are you for defunding the police?
How are you defining defund the police? It's actually wrong and backward to think that more police officers will create more safety. We need to get rid of money bail.
Convicted, in prison, like the Boston Marathon bomber, on death row, people who are convicted of sexual assault, they should be able to vote?
I think we should have that conversation. I am prepared to get rid of the filibuster to pass a Green New Deal. I have always supported Medicare for all. I was very happy to sign on to Bernie's bill, and I give Bernie, frankly, a lot of credit. There's no question I'm in favor of banning fracking.
Do you ban plastic straws?
I think we should.
I mean, that's her. There's no attack. That's her on her. And I love what the Trump campaign has done on this. And I think they should do more of it and put a lot of money behind this. This is exactly she can say everything she wants. Remember, most people don't know anything about her. That ad tells you everything you need to know, and we need to do more of it. So this is what the campaign should be doing more of. And I'm really excited that they did this and put this out there. Share it. It's on Real Donald Trump's Twitter, on his Instagram. Get it out there. Let people understand who she is. This is a big deal. All right, I'm going to bring in Robert Cahaly in a minute. I want to talk to him about this brand new Trafalgar Group polling in these key states, where the races stand, what issues we should be focusing on and not. Before I do that, one of the things that's interesting is this tax on tips issue has come up, as you guys know. The IRS is going after people like that, though. They're going after people who they think owe money, professionally, personally, 10,000, 10 million, it doesn't matter. Because the Democrats voted for more IRS agents, 50,000 more. And the IRS is sending out what they call these letters, pay up notices. They want to get your money. So don't talk to anybody from the IRS unless you have professional help. I think the best in the business is the folks at Tax Network, tnusa.com/Sean Spicer, tnusa.com/Spicer, or call them 1-800-245-6000. The folks at Tax Network have recovered over $1 billion for their clients, and they can help you too. Do not talk to anyone from the IRS. Respond to a letter. Take the phone call until you talk to my friends at Tax Network USA. All right, I want to begin this conversation with Robert Cahaly by understanding what has shifted in the race since Kamala Harris got inserted after they pushed Joe Biden out. Robert, good to see you. Let me just start with this. Like, what has fundamentally changed, if anything, since Joe Biden dropped out, or was rather pushed out of the race, and Kamala Harris replaced him? What is fundamentally changed in terms of the numbers?
The most important thing that's changed is the enthusiasm. Before, the Republicans had a significant enthusiasm advantage that they just don't have anymore. In most states, the Republican enthusiasm was over 80% of the voters, and the Democrats were under 60 in almost every battleground state. Now the Democrats are at parity, and both parties are in the 80s. So a level of enthusiasm has come, and just like with the Republicans, the right element of the party is the side that's most excited. The left element of the Democrat Party is the one that is making up that enthusiasm gap. And so that's the most significant things that's changed. And people are, likely voters is now a bigger impact than it was before.
So the thing that I think a lot of people are wondering is, you've got this woman who 30 days ago was the most unpopular vice president in U.S. history, according to some of these polls. And now everybody's fawning over her. Time magazine has her on their cover. The media
on their cover,
says...
And yet in the middle of the magazine, explained that she wouldn't sit for an interview. Unbelievable.
Robert Cahaly, that's probably the best thing that I've heard all day.
True.
I mean, that's actually, I'm going to have to steal that from you. Oh, I love it. But let me go back to the question. Are they excited that it's just that she's not Joe Biden, or are they actually excited when you talk about this enthusiasm? Are they excited that it's her?
Yeah, I think they're just excited that it's not Joe Biden, and they were looking for someone they could get behind. I mean, after the debate, I watched, and I make a point of trying to get a mix of input. And so, especially after I watched Biden fall apart, I'm like, man, I taped MSNBC and I watched CNN. I'm like, this is going to be amazing. And what I found interesting is on both of those, within an hour, they had Kamala Harris giving an interview. And to a point, I mean, literally, John King said, wow, where they've been keeping her the last 3 years. Boy, she sure articulates the message far better than President Biden does. And the same kind of love fest on MSNBC. And I knew exactly right then what was going to happen. I mean, it was clear as a bell to me. And so that's why I've been warning Republicans and saying for a long time, if you listen to our podcast, Polling Plus, with me and Matt Tower, you've heard us say it for weeks, overconfidence will lose this election. That this is an election that the Republicans should have been making the issue of not just about Biden's weakness and how old he was, but about the policies, because if they had been attacking the policies and they hadn't been overconfident, they could have switched candidates and it wouldn't really matter. But what's happened to the Democrats are excited about they don't want Trump to win. They're excited about trying to beat Trump. Republicans are excited about getting Trump elected. And they've got somebody that can be their standard bearer, and they're excited about it because everybody wants to be excited about this election, and they didn't want to come into it, feeling like they were going to lose. And they think they got a spark of hope to win, and they'll believe whatever you tell them at this point.
Yeah, I think that's spot on. When you look at the numbers, generally speaking, is the tightening of the race because Democrats are coming home that were concerned about Biden, or are there certain groups more than others that are performing better than others? Like what accounts for the movement when you dive down deep?
Well, one, she is doing a better job with independents by a long shot than Biden was. And the other thing that we saw happening is there were a lot of folks who just didn't really like either candidate. And we were seeing numbers like RFK, 9-10%. We started seeing this after the assassination attempt on Trump. Those numbers in the middle started to shrink. And I think they're going to continue shrinking. People have kind of picked a side now, and there's not going to be the number of quote unquote protest votes cast just because they don't like either candidate. I think that's one of the things that's happening now is people are kind of returning back to their political tribes. what she has benefited from, she's picking up a lot of the young people who are disaffected, and she's making some grounds in the African American community. Not so much with the African American men, the younger men, but she's kind of consolidating and closing the enthusiasm gap with the older African Americans. And so you're seeing that, and it's just a consolidation of, there were a lot of Democrats who were, looking at voting third party, and she's brought a lot of them home. But make no mistake, she's picking up, in most of the battleground states we polled, and between Matt and I and the last week, we saw her ahead in most every one of the states with independent voters. Now, the question is, well, then how could Trump be leading if that was the case? And let me explain what the difference is. Trump does better among Republicans than she does among Democrats. Trump's strength has always been that he picks up a certain amount of people who self-identify as Democrats, historical Democrats, blue-collar Democrats in the Rust Belt. And so generally in most of these states, with pretty much the only real exception we found is Arizona, which has its own party identification issues. But outside of Arizona, in most places, Trump leads by 5 and 6%. He does better with Democrats than she does with Republicans. And that is letting him make up the difference of falling short with independents.
So for a while, it seemed like the Trump team felt really good about young voters. Is that worth pursuing, or is it that because it's no longer Joe Biden and she's been pushed in and it's Kamala Harris, that it's a futile task to go after that? Or is it worth still trying to go after them by reaching out to, influencers, et cetera?
Well, I think the influencer stuff is important. The other thing is what we're finding with the especially, the youngest generation of new voters, the Gen Z, is they really like authenticity. And so what I would say, if they want to see if it's going to work, spend about a week running lots of ads where Kamala Harris is contradicting herself in one position and the other, and then see what kind of an impact that has on those younger voters. Because my prediction is, if you measured before and you really put some serious attention to those ads, and then measured after, and you got to hit the ads where they're watching. I've worried so many in the Republican side just think, oh, just put it on TV. No, you've got to have it everywhere. It's got to be on YouTube. It's got to be on connected TVs. It's got to be on Spotify. The ads got to be everywhere. But if you do that, I think you might find that authenticity issue really will help bring some of those young people back.
All right, so you mentioned black males. What about them? Is it worth targeting them? Are they a big enough demographic in these battleground states to make a difference?
Well, one, I think a lot of them are already coming this direction, but I do think, especially in the battleground states, especially in the battleground cities, that you have so many of these voters. I mean, we're not talking about a lot of cities, and we're not talking about a lot of money. So I think that it is certainly worth doing, and there are a lot of specific programming. I mean, the fear is, and we see this too much with the Republican establishment consultancy. They just look on the screen and look at what are the gross rating points and buy the ads, and they don't look at the programs. They don't do anything because it's hard work. And that's how you sitting in Atlanta and watching Trump ads play during CNN, because nobody actually bought the programs correctly. You can't do it that way. But if you would literally look at the programs and try to think about and look at some of your polling and some of your feedback, where are the black males that you could get? Where are they watching? And specifically target, whether it's radio or TV or advertisement. I think it is certainly a very small price for a very large return.
Is that still a problem with Republicans writ large? Like, we want to just throw 1,000 gross rating
Yes.
points up on television and say, great, that's awesome. We're reaching, a huge audience, but we're not going where people are on OTT television, so that people who have cut the cord or are watching just on social media. Like, are we still just focused too much on broadcast television?
I wouldn't say it's the party. because I think the parties figured it out, and I think the Trump campaign's figured it out. The problem is you have a lot of billionaires out there who are working with, people who've convinced them they can make a difference. And I was on the phone with one the other day, just listening to nonsense. Oh, we've got our ad flight set for the last 8 weeks. And I'm like, yeah, 2004 called like it's advertising policy back. I mean, it is ridiculous. And it's like, I literally just want to get to the phone and just, do the whole thing from Back to the Future, just bang him on the head and say, hey, hello, anybody at home? I mean, it's ridiculous. And the thing is, they don't care. They've got their commissions built in. They've got their production built in. They're not even going to change their ads on the fly. And far too many of our generous donors are taken advantage by these, hucksters and profiteers. And there's a lot of them out there.
Well, the thing that people who may not be, that tuned into politics don't get is that when you do broadcast television, you get a bigger percentage of the buy. So if you're the consultant that convinces someone to do $1 million buy of broadcast television, you get anywhere between maybe 7 and 20%, 15% of the buy. It's a much smaller
really
nut.
Taking advantage of them, you get that kind of money. I think that's really high. But yeah, and you see it all the time. And they don't want to get clever. They don't want to get creative because that's work. It's work to look at a buy and to look at every single program you're going to buy, state by state, and make sure the program matches the ad. Maybe you have 3 ads, and the kind of ad that is going to work on Lifetime TV isn't necessarily going to work, let's say on the History Channel. They're all kind of different programs. I mean, old people disproportionately watch the Weather Channel. And if you're smart, you're buying that stuff all over the East Coast right now because you can get it cheap. And when it's hurricane, you're getting huge ratings. That's not but you're not going to get a bunch of, Gen Zs and millennials who are looking on their phone for the weather. So you got to use some good sense, and you got to work. And these guys, they're ready to go buy their next vacation home.
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, it's sort of like, I'm going to wait till the 6 o'clock news to see what the weather is tomorrow. Most people are like, yeah, I'm just going to look at my phone and see what it is right now. So you mentioned old people. They disproportionately vote much greater percentages than the rest of the population. There was some evidence or some polling that suggested that there was an erosion before Harris got subbed in. That Trump was losing, is that not losing, but eroding support among seniors? Is that something that you're seeing, and is it of a concern?
No, not so much, because seniors are going to be a little harder to convince because, you make all the jokes you want about seniors' memory, but they're paying attention and they remember this lady was the border czar. I mean, we just got through Matt and I asking this question at every Battleground state. And you'd be surprised, 50% of the population has no idea that she was ever called the border czar. But that is not the case among seniors. So I think the shenanigans and the nonsense of the media selling a different Kamala than everybody knows is going to be lost a little more on the seniors. Now, certainly some of the seniors, people, they keep saying, well, it's this phenomenon of seniors moving to the left. I'm like, no, greatest generation is dying and the baby boomers are now seniors. That was to be expected because this group has always been a little more left than the one before it. And so as the greatest and silent generation pass on, yes, of course, the seniors are going to move more to the left. But a lot of these people are living on fixed incomes. Inflation is getting them, and they know who this lady is. And she can't rebrand herself quite as easily with people who pay attention a little more.
So that's really interesting that you're noting that. People who pay attention, right? Particularly seniors who might watch the news more, seem more engaged in the day-to-day back and forth of politics. But I want to pick up on the other group that you mentioned, the people who aren't as engaged, who didn't know she was the border czar. Isn't that a reminder to us that, hey, guys, we pay attention? If you're watching this show, if you listen to your podcast, you get it. But for a lot of Americans that go to work, maybe 2 jobs, come home, dealing with a million things, they're not paying attention to the fact that she was the border czar or did a bunch of other things that she never followed through on.
And that's the biggest mistake. I mean, even going back to the days when I used to do campaigns, one of the things I would tell them is the candidates were all convinced. I cannot tell you how many people were running for Congress or the State House or something like that, and were telling me, "Oh, I'm gonna put together all these position papers," and I'm like, "No, you missing the whole boat. The average person isn't real clear what the difference between a state senator and a U.S. senator is." And when you start by understanding that, when you understand people live real lives, they've got real stuff to do. They don't know these things. Oh, and by the way, they don't answer 40-question polls either. And so that's part of why the whole polling industry is flawed. But they don't. And they don't attend Trump rallies. They don't attend Harris rallies. They don't watch conservative media. They don't watch left-leaning media. They watch maybe their 11 o'clock news, and they get some stuff on their phone, and they look at what their friends share with them. And so they're not living in this same world, and they don't get all this messaging. And that is one of the things that has me so concerned as she rebrands herself. We all know that Trump, for example, talked about tips first, but he didn't own it. It wasn't an advertising all over these states. And so when she steals it, who says who thought of it first? Is the Trump campaign going to depend on the mainstream media to make the point that he said it first? Now, some of them have said it in their publications, and some of them said it on their websites and even their broadcasts, but are they going to make a real effort on this? I mean, this is the point. Whoever says it first in front of the audience is the one that matters. And so what I would say is there's going to be a battle. I mean, even Biden is now saying he's, getting rid of tips on taxes. Well, I mean, taxes on tips. Well, I mean, you can look. They put out directives on how to pay the taxes on your tips. So what we need is some speed, and whoever advertises this the mostest and the loudest is going to win that battle about taxes on tips, and that's what needs to happen. This thing is about economics now, and it's got to focus on that.
Yeah, I want to get to the state polling that you guys put out, but I want to really hammer home on the point that you just made there. It's whoever says it the most and the loudest that wins. And so let's talk about the tactic there for a second, right? I continue to use a phrase over and over again, and I say that when you talk about the process, right, whether it's, Joe Biden got pushed aside for Harris, or she didn't win a vote, that's like yelling at the refs, right, in the middle of the game. You're upset about the process. It seems to me the policies are going to matter. Who wins the argument of securing the country, making it safer, making it more prosperous, making people's lives better, right?
Yeah, exactly. They don't run clips about the process on SportsCenter. They run the clips on the scores. And you're exactly right. And that's the point. That stuff doesn't matter. You got to get to what matters, because this inside baseball is useless. You got to focus on what is important and what affects people's lives.
So when it comes to issues, and I talked about this at the beginning of the show, about like crowd size, I get why Trump's pissed. I get it. I mean, to me, it's always been about respect. You guys have never in the media acknowledged the support I have, the movement I've built. I get it, but it doesn't move the needle. No one's voting on you because she's cheating, or they're getting great press. That doesn't matter, does it?
Right. It's about the people who weren't at either rally. It's about the messaging. And the fact is, the Republicans and Trump have a better message. And anything that takes away from delivering that message is losing this election.
Okay. All right. I want to get into the states. You guys have some brand new exclusive polling. I want to start with North Carolina. Right now, you've got North Carolina. You've got Trump up 48.9 to Harris 45.2. That's interestingly, I pulled up the Real Clear Politics average. You guys are pretty much dead on that. Real Clear Politics has Trump up 3.2 in North Carolina. He's won it the past 2 cycles. It's been close. Where do you think the race is in North Carolina? Is this in the bag for him? Is he still, he's shy of 50%, not by much, but still shy. What is your advice to the Trump team when it comes to putting North Carolina in the bag?
Yeah, I've really never bought that North Carolina was one of the really hotly contested battleground states, because here's the thing. Yes, the Republicans have had a hard time with some gubernatorial races in the past. I can think 2020 and 2016 did not have very good candidates. But the Republicans won both U.S. Senate seats, and in 2022 picked up every single constitutional office but governor that was out there. And 2020 picked up every constitutional office except governor. Of course, but like I said, both U.S. Senate seats, and won super majorities in both the legislative chambers. So this is not a state that is really trending blue. It's just had a few blue exceptions at the top. So I think that it's not a state that Trump will win widely, but I think it's probably a state that a 1.5, 2 point, even 2.5 point victory is pretty. That's what we feel like it'll end up. And if you look at the last few years, we've had the most accurate prediction in North Carolina year in and year out.
I know you guys didn't put it out there, but you mentioned the exception of the rule being the gubernatorial race. You've got Lieutenant Governor Mark Robinson right now running.
Yeah, more than in the last two. We did not measure that on this one. We plan on measuring some of the down ticket races in future polls.
Well, but here's my question for you. The Democrats have sort of said that because they don't think Mark Robinson's a particularly attractive and popular candidate, that's their ticket once again to making.
How'd that work out for them in 20 and 16? Probably
Okay,
had bad candidates in both of those too. And had bad candidates in both of those. Not suggesting Mark Robinson is also. I'm saying those two were truly bad candidates who lost and didn't have an impact. So, we'll see how Mark Robinson ends up being.
All right, that's the answer I was looking for, too, because if that's what your hope is that, well, we think another that somehow one candidate down ballot's going to help us. All right, I want to move to the big state that everyone loves to talk about, Pennsylvania. Obviously, Biden tried to make it, this whole case about how it was his home state. You guys have Trump up 45.9 to 44.4. Again, I mean, that's just over a 1.5. Real Clear Politics has it at 0.8. Pretty much. I mean, again, this is all margin of error stuff. So let's start with the premise here. Is this truly the state to watch?
Yeah, I think Pennsylvania is going to be a extremely important state to watch. Now, when it was Biden, it was probably the most critical state. I will tell you right now, the state that Trump has to win, and that this week I think Matt polled that one, but is Georgia. But Pennsylvania is a key state. I think Trump has some advantages there, especially when he holds her feet to the fire on fracking. But let me also say, and I'm just going to say it the capable way I'm able of saying it. Pennsylvania voter opinion doesn't necessarily affect what the vote looks like. And of course, this year they've already prepared people for the vote will continue to come in a long period after Election Day. And, I've said in the past, you got to win Pennsylvania by at least 2.5 to win Pennsylvania. And I'll stand by that.
I found it odd that the Pennsylvania Secretary of State Elections Office puts out this tweet saying, hey, don't expect to see a result. And they've been trying to update that since, saying, well, here's why you shouldn't expect this. Can you imagine what happens on election night if that's what we're waiting for and these guys drag it out?
Yes, I can. And this is the problem. This is what is so frustrating. My question is, how can Florida, how can Texas, how can North Carolina let us know election night? What is it that's so fundamentally flawed about Pennsylvania that they can't do it? Why can they not count votes in Pennsylvania and Arizona? It doesn't.
Well, they would tell you that it's a state law that doesn't permit them to do it before 7 p.m. to count the absentee and mail-in ballots.
Well, then get enough people in there to count the ballots. There's a lot of states that don't let you count the absentees until then.
Oh, no. I'm not, just so we're clear.
I don't want anyone to start defending Pennsylvania. But that's my point.
I'm not defending Pennsylvania.
I mean, the thing is, I'm sure, the RNC's put together a great program to get people who want to help. I bet there's a lot of people who'd love to help that count get going.
Yeah.
But this is what contributes to a lot of, let me just tell you, if somehow they had told everybody election night Biden won, it would have made a big difference in what the country went through.
Yeah.
But the fact was, when you draw it out like that, and you start wonder chains of customs, the longer it goes, the more you have to worry about where the ballots were, who was there, were there a camera, all this stuff. When they're all being counted at the same time, you don't have to worry about all that.
Okay, so let me just get back to the numbers, though. Based on where we are now, 1 point up for Trump by your count. I mean, is this literally like a jump ball, or is this,
yes,
hey, it's trending in the right way? Dan Muser, the congressman from Pennsylvania, was on the show the other day. He said they've done just unbelievable spade work in increasing Republican registration. So you mentioned North Carolina, it not trending, right? Is Pennsylvania trending one way or the other that we need to keep an eye on?
It's not trending against Trump. I don't think it's trending either direction. I think it is where it is. Here's the thing. I think the best thing that the Republicans have going is that McCormick is going to run a good campaign. And it is always good to have help. And this guy has got the talent and was going to spend what he needs to spend. And he's already been attacking Harris in his own commercials. So I think that makes a difference. The work they've been making up there makes a difference. But with only a 1 to 1.5 point advantage for Trump, yes, I would say Pennsylvania would still be a jump ball at this point.
Okay. Arizona, you've got Trump up 47-7 to Harris 46-5. Again, that's a 1.2 advantage to Trump. Real Clear Politics has it at 1.5. You guys are spot on, right? Once again. Where do you think Arizona ends up? Is it trending the right way? I thought that Arizona was a fluke last time for a variety of reasons. I don't want to, go down that rabbit hole. But my point is, does it revert back?
I don't know that I can say that, because remember at the beginning when I was talking about Republicans support Trump and how there's that gap?
Yeah. Arizona's
a place where the Republicans are a little more divided on Trump. And I'm sure this goes back to some of the John McCain stuff and all that. But there's just, Arizona has a lot of things going. I mean, you've got some bad court rulings about citizenship on voting. But you also have people who are seeing, whereas immigration has kind of moved on as the number one national issue, it is still a very probably number one issue still in Arizona. These people are feeling it day to day. So I think Arizona, I wouldn't say it's trending either direction, but I would say that Arizona, I'd say it's actually in that jump ball territory, because just looking at some of the stuff that happened to Arizona, winning it by 1.5 points or so just ain't enough. The Trump campaign to be confident needs to be up there by a solid 2 or 3 points. I mean, there's got to be a massive turnout to make sure Arizona's won. But it's right for the taking if you can just hit the hypocrisy on her position. I mean, when I've actually heard Trump talk about it on the Musk interview, and I saw this ad. When I saw Kamala's ad on the border, I was like, man, that's a good ad. If I didn't know any better, I think this lady's been focused on the border.
That's right.
I mean,
it's so disingenuous. It is so disingenuous.
It really is. They finally figured out, well, we can say whatever we want. Why not just say whatever you want?
You know what? I'm so glad you said that. I keep saying, if you knew that you could rob a bank and no one would stop you or arrest you or hold you accountable, people would be robbing banks. And when you have a complicit media like they have, they're like, why don't we just say it? Who's going to stop us?
Exactly. Nobody's holding you accountable at all. I mean, it's like telling everybody you're good looking. Like, oh, really? Oh, I didn't realize you're good looking. You are.
Maybe you are. Maybe you are. All right. Nevada, you guys have Trump 48-2 to her 44.8. This one actually, to me, was kind of the shocker of the group. meaning that she's up. I mean, he's up just over about 3.5 points. Again, the Real Clear Politics average has him up 3.2. You guys are right in there on that.
But let me say this.
When I say it's a
Nevada.
shocker, what?
Let me say this about Nevada. It is the only state that I have consistently gotten wrong 3 times in a row. When they put together that last-minute effort, it includes the Saturday before the election, for all the workers and the unions, they can erase a significant gap. And so I am not, even with that margin, I'm not ready to predict Nevada because I have literally been burned on it every single time. I mean, even when we
So
predicted
explain
in
to people
2016,
why. What is it that
well,
they
it's
do?
because the union workers, they have a machine like nothing you've ever seen. It is one of the most effective tools out there. They know who has asked for an absentee ballot, who has not have it turned in. And I know in 2022, they had union workers in California would go to your door in Nevada and say, hey, you requested an absentee ballot. It's Saturday, it hasn't been turned in yet. I'm here to get it. I mean, that's the kind of operation they have in Nevada. And so, in my experience, the only poll that's going to matter in Nevada is what it looks like after the Saturday before the election. I've been burned there too many times. I mean, even in 2016 when we got the electoral, 232 to 306, we got it perfect. Nevada and 2 other states flip-flop because Nevada is just a problem. They have got an incredible machine, and it doesn't surprise me that that's where Kamala Harris decided to break out the no taxes on tips.
Yeah. All right. The 3 states that you didn't do right away, right? This iteration were Michigan, Wisconsin, and Georgia. You mentioned Matt's going into the field.
Yeah, Matt Towery did all 3 of those last week. And so he put those out. And I believe in Michigan, I'm trying to remember best of my knowledge, I think in Michigan he had Trump down. Georgia, I think he had him up by 1. And I think he had Trump up by 1 in Wisconsin.
So of those 3 states, is there one that you think you're more bullish on?
I need to see more about what's going to happen with the disaffected people as it relates to Gaza. If she is pushed in a corner and she's got to go one way or the other and she disappoints them, I could see Michigan being more in play. But at this point, I would say of the 2 Rust Belts, I would say Wisconsin probably looks a little better at this point. But it really will depend a lot on that, the feeling as it relates to that issue on Gaza. And Georgia, I mean, literally, Georgia is everything. Georgia was going to be not that difficult a state when it was Biden. But Georgia is a big microcosm of the country, and it has a lot of African-American vote. And they are a lot more motivated. As a matter of fact, in the most recent poll that Towery did, he showed the Democrat enthusiasm a couple points higher than Republican in Georgia. And so Georgia's a place that is going to take a lot of work. And the one thing I will tell you is the Democrats have built quite a machine in the past few years. I remember when they put 1,000 operatives on, 1,000 operatives, not volunteers, operatives on the ground for those Senate runoffs. And this infrastructure they built, they've used again. They used again for the runoff with Herschel, and I think they're prepared to use it in this election. So I think Georgia, the Republicans really need to be focused on it. And there's been some changes, but what people don't understand about Georgia, how you could see what you saw in some of those movies and videos, is that if you cast an illegal ballot, let's say you go to Dropbox and you cast 50 and yours, you're only legally allowed to cast yours. Well, you've committed 49 cases of voter fraud. However, the law is flawed. It says those ballots must still be counted. And that's what people never understood. That's how you could see all those boxes being jammed. But when they said that the ballots were legal, they were telling the truth. Both things were true. So now, the fact is that people are a little more scared about getting prosecuted. That's one thing. But the fact is, once that ballot makes it in the box, then it's going to be counted, even if it has very nefarious means to getting in that box.
Unbelievable. The last thing I want to ask you.
That.
Well, I mean, this is a warning sign now for everyone. I just want to ask you one last thing. RFK, you were mentioning at the beginning, was up 9-10% for a while. He's got some ballot access issues now. He's polling 3-4%. Does that help or hurt Trump?
I don't think it hurts Trump, and that Trump people were for RFK. I think it affects Trump in the fact that there were people who didn't like either candidate who found themselves saying, well, in 2020, they didn't have anywhere to go. So if they didn't like either candidate, they kind of held their nose and voted for Biden. The possibility that in 2024, they'll have somewhere else to go is how it could help Trump for him to be there. So the more ballots RFK's on there, because there will still be Democrats who want to cast a protest ballot, probably more so than Republicans. And maybe not about Gaza, maybe because they're not supporting Israel enough. Maybe they just don't like her. But the fact is, I think in the end, him being on the ballot, probably everybody being on the ballot benefits Trump, because in 2020, that's one of the biggest differences between 2016 and 2020. In 2016, Jill Stein, her margin in almost every state was greater than Trump's margin of victory. And in 2020, there just wasn't anybody drawing votes like that. So even if between all three of them, West, Stein, and RFK, even between all three of them, they only get 4%. That might be the 4% that matters. So I think the more candidates on the ballot, the better for Trump.
All right. Robert Cahaly, I appreciate you being with us. You guys are the best at what you do. Thank you for joining us, and I look forward to checking back in with you.
Always good to be wherever Sean is.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
All right, guys, thanks for watching. A great rest of the week headed up as we begin the countdown to the DNC. Continue to subscribe. We'll see you on the morning meeting every morning at 9 o'clock on my YouTube channel. Hit that notification button, YouTube, Rumble, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeart, wherever you get your podcasts. We'll be back here tomorrow, as we are every night. Have a great one. We'll see you back. Well, if you enjoyed this content, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and click the notification bell to get more.